Reader's Guide. Background. Who is a refugee? A refugee is a person who is forced to flee his or her country in order to escape war, disaster, or persecution. Refugees often flee to save their own lives or those of family members. They don't know whether they will ever return home and don't have the time to pack precious possessions or say goodbye to their loved ones. The difference between an immigrant and a refugee is that immigrants have left their home countries voluntarily. For refugees, it is a life or death situation. They have no choice but to flee if they want to survive. Like Keck, there are currently an estimated 14 million refugees seeking homes in new countries all over the world. Many take asylum in camps in nearby countries. Hoping to one day return home. These camps are mostly run by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. While most refugees settle permanently in the asylum country, about 1% resettle in countries such as Canada, Australia, Denmark, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, New Zealand, and the United States. Refugees in the United States. America has a long history of welcoming refugees who have fled persecution in their home countries. Each year, tens of thousands of refugees arrive in towns and cities across the country to begin new lives. Of the 11.2 million immigrants who were admitted to the U.S. legally between 1993 and 2005, about 1.1 million were refugees. Resettlement agencies work with community members to help welcome new refugees. Once they have arrived on American soil, the U.S. government helps them by providing them with basic expenses, including cash assistance, food stamps, housing, clothing, school admission, Social Security, and employment services. Historical context. Sudan. Keck and his family are from Sudan, the largest country in Africa. Since 1956, there have only been 11 years of peace in this nation, which is roughly 1/4 the size of the United States. Over 2 million people have died as a result of a civil war in which the North and South have been fighting over religious and tribal differences. The Nuer. Keck and his family are members of the Nuer tribe, one of the largest ethnic groups in East Africa. Traditionally, the Nuer are traveling cattle herders who value cows in their culture, economy, and religion. For example, cattle are used for payment of fines and debts. A Nuer will risk his life to defend his cattle. Young boys like Keck, who names the aging cow Gull and showers him with affection, often have a favorite ox who they name and treat as if it was a puppy. Another distinguishing characteristic of the Nuer are facial markings called gar. These 6 parallel lines are cut across the forehead with a razor, often with a dip in the lines above the nose. They are an important coming of age ritual for adolescents. The Lost Boys. Katherine Applegate's inspiration for Keck's character partly came from the many stories she heard about the lost boys of Sudan. During the civil war that raged in Sudan between 1998 and 2003, more than 27,000 young boys were orphaned. They were called the Lost Boys. Like Keck, they saw their parents and siblings killed before their eyes and lost everything that was precious to them. Many had to travel to safety in groups through the deserts of Sudan for thousands of miles. They ended up in refugee camps in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, scarred with the memories of the violence they had witnessed. Before 2001, about 4,000 Sudanese lost boy refugees arrived in the United States and rebuilt their lives here in the memory of the loved ones they left behind. Coming to Minnesota. In the 1990s, large numbers of refugees from Sudan began arriving in the United States to escape their country's civil war. Many came to Minnesota, where resettlement agencies helped them build new lives. In the 2000 census, 13% of Minnesota's foreign born residents were from Africa. Most were refugees fleeing civil war in Sudan, Liberia, and Somalia. Between 1998 and 2007, in fact, nearly 25,000 Sudanese refugees, mostly newer, were resettled in Minnesota. Katherine Applegate started writing Home of the Brave when she found herself asking, why or what must it be like for a Sudanese refugee to arrive in Minnesota?